I do not like The Last of Us Part 2. I have formed my own opinion on the game by playing it and not letting an outside source tell me it's bad for X, Y, and Z reasons, and so I have come to the conclusion that I do not like it. I think that the game does not have a grasp on what it wants to be as soon as it gets to a certain point, and I have been cautiously watching Season 2, awaiting the end of it and possibly the end of my enjoyment. Now, although I can give more reasons for why I dislike it, I do not want to yet because there is no Season 3, and based on what happened at the end of Season 2, Episode 7, I don't see a use in spoiling what comes next for people who haven't seen it. Now, I will say this though, I do not hate The Last of Us Part 2 for its inclusivity, its first half of the game, or the main turnoff for gamers alike, the death of Joel. The people that pass up his demise as shock value for the sake of shock value have not seen a centipede of humans before. I'm not saying it's not shocking, but there is reason behind it and a motive that is extremely harsh but isn't for no reason. I put down the game for a day after that happened. It felt like it was too bad to be true, yet somehow it just did what I thought was impossible, and that's why I kinda liked it. So there is some explaining to do since the video isn't about the 5-year-old game, but the 1-month-old episode Through the Valley. We had that episode during Season 1 with Sam and Henry, but that episode of Season 2 I thought deserved its own video because there is an art to killing off your main character, doing it in a way that forces the audience to have no sympathy for the villain, doing it in a way that horrifies the audience, doing it in a way that risks the entire show's viewership, and doing it in a way to set up the perfect precedent of how stuff is going to go down. This is how The Last of Us Season 2 teaches us how to use shock value correctly. Now, before we get on to the main event, there is a perfect example that I need to use from another great apocalypse story that will help you understand the extent to how shock value can set a perfect precedent. But first, keep in mind that there is a like, comment, and subscribe button, and you can use those at any point during the video to support this channel. You can even take it a step further by purchasing a membership to make this channel soar. Okay, let me tell you what the story is. It's A Quiet Place. I don't intend to spoil anything outside of the opening scene, so if you haven't seen it, don't worry about ending spoilers. But if you have seen it, then you may know what I'm getting at. The movie opens up by showcasing the world and the scenario this family is in by doing everything silently and making anything loud out to be a big deal. It sets a stake, but you don't really know exactly what a consequence of being loud is until this happens. The youngest kid in the family had been given a battery-powered airplane to play by his sister after removing the batteries because it was taken away from the kid out of the threat it would be too loud by his father. While walking out of the shop and back home on their carefully placed sand path, he activates the toy, leading to the metaphorical timer of death activating too. He's a kid though, he can't die. We haven't even gotten to the title card yet, our thoughts you may have been thinking, but what really subverts the scene was the fact that all your doubts fuels your shock when the kid actually dies in the opening scene. This scene sets the precedent that no one is safe, not even the remaining kids, not the parents, and we understand by that one death what the consequences of being loud is. It's the perfect intro sequence because it uses shock value effectively to reveal the reality of this world. It's perfect because the shock had a use to it. It wasn't there just to kill a character, but it's the warning of what's to come to keep the audience from guessing who's gonna make it out alive by the end, and to start the movie out with a bang. If you haven't connected the dots yet, the way A Quiet Place relates to The Last of Us is not just an apocalyptic scenario, but it's the way they use shock value. Now, during episode 2 of season 2, the moment I knew from playing the game finally came, and it is as gut-wrenchingly sad, fills you with rage, and basically overall makes the audience go through the 5 stages of grief. A lot of these emotions come from the fact Joel, the guy you were rooting for all of season 1, was the one you had to watch make the most difficult of decisions and suffer the most heartbreaking losses throughout the show, get killed in easily the most horrific way possible. His death feels below him in the way he convinces the audience that his decision to save Ellie was the right one, only to be the reason these people brutally and slowly end his life. But hold on, let's compare and contrast the Quiet Place scene from the Last of Us scene. Joel has this opportunity in a world that is filled with violence to use violence in order to get what he wants. Ellie. He makes the decision for Ellie that she should be saved instead of dying for a cure, and Joel is able to get out all alive and kill kill 19 Fireflies Rambo style with no repercussions for his actions to go live with Ellie and Jackson. From this moment, we set up the fact that Joel does this action, similar to how the boy takes this loud toy out into a world where sound is deadly. And according to Newton's third law, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, meaning that this will come back to bite them both. Joel, years later, is now older, slower, and is a changed man from what he once was, but his actions at the hospital and Fireflies would soon catch up to him. He rescues the woman who happens to want to kill him and gets shot in the leg and then tortured, but there are feelings this has on the audience too. We know that these people coming after Joel aren't necessarily in the wrong for being mad, but we love Joel. We know why he did what he did at the hospital, and when they dare touch him or even threaten others he cares about, it makes us feel angered. The fact we have come all this way only for this one woman to pull a gun on him and shoot his leg hurts us too, and probably sets off alarms of, dude, what the hell did you think you're doing? Or even much more vulgar phrases. We have seen that Joel was forced into this messed up world and has suffered pain beyond comprehension, so hearing his screams of pure agony as Abby bashes his gunshot wound with a golf club sets off another reaction: sadness. Humans have this feature where when you see someone have an emotion, we can feel it too. Like, think to yourself the last time you saw someone looking at their phone laughing, and you look at them having this great time and find yourself laughing. The same case of empathy comes during the scene, but with much different emotions. When you hear Joel, a usual down-to-earth guy who never shows fear or pain, screaming for his life as he's being tortured, the audience can't do anything but share his pain, feeling angered by the fact that Abby's doing this and saddened by the fact that Joel has to go through this pain. Here's another thing too. There is a good chance that the first time you saw the scene, whether in the game or in the show, you were pretty horrified by what Abby was doing. This feeling of horror doesn't come from the fact that you just got jump scared by some infected, but instead by the fact that you're watching a 60-year-old man be gruesomely tortured and killed by a 20-year-old woman. Most people do not take kindly to torture, unless you're into that stuff, well then you do you. But the idea of watching someone you care for scream so loud in pain that you can hear the tears in their eyes can set people off knowing that this torture they're experiencing isn't just going away quickly, but instead there is nothing you can do except watch helpless, disturbed, and of course, horrified. Now, I've given you uses of shock value that work, but what are some occasions of shock value that are only there for the sake of being shock value? Well, have you ever heard of the analog horror series, The Painter? If you have, then I'm sorry you have, and if you're about to learn about it, I'm even more sorry for what I'm about to explain. So to make sure this video does not get age restricted, I'm just gonna put up some cute puppies as I describe the horrors. So the Painter series is about a serial killer who draws paintings of their victims after unleashing his full powers on them. It's not a pretty sight anytime they do, but the artwork is cool at least. But one thing this analog horror series does wrong is that some of these paintings have expanded lore on them, as they have their own side plot story where the most deranged things happen. Now, I can't describe some of these things because they're really edgy, but let's just say that there are not fun things that happen to some children. If you want to learn more about that, then go find a video on it, but I'm not explaining it here. The kid in the opening scene of A Quiet Place has it better off than this kid. If you haven't guessed, the whole purpose of these scenes is to shock the audience and nothing else. If you shock the audience for the sake of shocking them, then you're not using writing capabilities correctly. If you wanted to ramp up the serial killer, there are better ways of that than just creating a sickening murder sequence. But to get back on track, as Ellie enters the building and gets stopped, we have another predicament. Sometimes when a main character dies, it can be shockingly sad because you cared for this person, but sometimes in other film, a main character is put into a deadly situation and they're about to die until someone comes in and saves them last second. This trope is actually used a ton in different films, which makes people during times like Joel's death believe that they aren't actually gonna kill him. He's probably just gonna get very hurt, but they wouldn't actually kill him, right? This is something Joel's death also capitalizes off of: your doubt. Almost like a bluff, there are probably moments before Joel's death where you question that what was gonna happen, but you doubt they'd follow through with it because he's a main character. Scratch that, he's the main character throughout season 1. He's the one you get to know about the most in season 1, so why would they just kill him off? But the closer and closer to Joel's death is when those emotions I've talked about earlier begin to start, and right before it happens, the hope you have that this will just be that trope where the main character almost dies is still holding you together. But then all of a sudden, your doubt that they would do this becomes less fiction when they actually do it. The shock of watching Joel die takes people through it because they had two ideas of how this would end, and the one you really didn't think they'd go through with actually happened. Now, with all of that, it's finally time to get into the part of the video that will most likely disrespect some of the people watching the show. Joel's death is not done just for shock value, and if you believe it is, then you truly do not understand the show. Remember Sam and Henry? Arguably one of the best episodes of the entire show has one of the most heartbreaking final moments. Sam was infected the night before. Ellie tries to save him, but it doesn't work and Henry has to kill his younger brother right before he chooses to, well, let's just say he couldn't live with himself after that. Is that shock value? Yes, it was, but something having shock value does not mean that it's made by mean-spirited evil writers that like watching people suffer. No, Sam and Henry's death reveals something about the world of The Last of Us. They reveal that no one is safe. Everyone is expendable because their world is not forgiving to people who can't fend for themselves and can't escape quickly enough. It shows that Joel and Ellie's journey is not as easy as it sometimes looks when they're walking through mountains with no enemies around, and that their journey has been thriving off of the suffering of others. Joel and Ellie get to walk away from this, but the man who had to sacrifice himself and his younger brother did not. This relates to how Joel and Ellie thrive off of the car that Bill and Frank left them after their journey was cut short because of an unstoppable disease. This once again relates to Tess staying behind to blow herself and every infected coming after them up to save Joel and Ellie. And this again relates to how if Sarah wasn't in that positioning in Joel's arm, Joel would have most likely died. It's unfortunate, but it's true that Sarah's death took all the bullets and let Joel live. Finally, even Joel kills all the Fireflies and Marlene to guarantee that Ellie would live and that they would never try to find them again. So let me ask you again. Is Joel's death a death that is done to just shock the audience and doesn't necessarily have a purpose to the story besides having shock value? Or rather, is the story thrived off of his death because it creates a revenge story of Ellie along with Dina tracking down the WLF in order to find and kill the people associated with Joel's death, and especially Abby? You can argue that, well, if you're gonna have this shocking moment in it that will break people's hearts, why have it in the first place? And a good rebuttal to that is, why do any stories have sad moments in them? Should every story have no sad parts to them? Should they just be normal, happy stories of normal and happy people? Or are obstacles necessary to making good stories? I would not consider Joel's death to be shock value for the sake of shock value. The reason people claim that is because people have a bond with him and couldn't let him go. His death is horrific, it's sad, it makes people angry at the ones who did it, but it's not shocking for the sake of being shocking. It's shocking for the sake of pushing the narrative forward and fueling Ellie to start her own adventure of pure rage and revenge, and I'm pregnant, I'm immune. So overall, Joel's death isn't fun, but it does teach us the effect of what killing a main character can do to the audience as we break down the exact emotions people had during this heartbreaking scene. Shock value is the main thing of this video, and I hope that more people understand the effect of shock value and how, when used correctly, it can be a powerful way to advance a plot. If you out there do not like Joel's death, then yeah, that's perfectly fine. I hate that it happened too, but I understand it through a narrative aspect. But if you can't bear another episode after that, then you do you. I know The Last of Us 2 has a lot more in store with Season 3, but the amount of criticism people have pulled from the abyss to complain about this is sickening to me. The Last of Us 2 has problems, and there is way more to come if they don't step up their game. Literally. But this whole Joel's death is just shock value needs to stop here and die here with him. But until Season 3 comes out, thank you everybody for watching. I'm Enchanted. Bye.